We've got ones that can see. Welcome to today's show, everyone. It's not taking Donald Trump and his new administration long to bring about every New World Order agenda that we could possibly imagine. Let's just call it Agenda 2030 in real time, occurring in 2025. And again, nobody's paying attention to this. So the bird flu is something we've been programmed with over the last couple of years. We've constantly heard about it. Many people were assuming that the bird flu would be disease X. Now, I discussed that they wouldn't use the bird flu as disease X, that the bird flu would serve a greater purpose for them to be able to get this gene editing mRNA into the food supply chain. So what they've done is obviously create story after story after story about mutations, how suddenly cows conveniently have the bird flu. Now suddenly humans are getting the bird flu. And the company called Zoetis has been chosen by the Trump administration, apparently. The company has received conditional approval for a bird flu vaccine from the U.S. Department of Agriculture, and they're already putting out propaganda to make sure people don't really pay attention to it. Things like chickens get the bird flu vaccine, not people, right? Because immediately what people are going to start doing is start saying, whoa, not again. Whoa, I don't want to get one for the bird flu. And again, we'll still have suckers who would actually go and get injected for a flu shot from an actual bird flu, which is how insane people have gotten. But they're making sure people realize, look, this is just for the chickens. Don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. But it is, in fact, a big deal. So Trump's USDA has approved this new experimental bird flu vax for meat and egg producing chickens. This is the same manufacturing company that injected over 100 million wildlife animals during the last quote unquote pandemic. And it looks like they've taken a pivot here away from CRISPR, but there is a direct connection between CRISPR and Zoetis. Remember, when they start seeing people catching on, and this is based all off of the data that they get online. Remember when I covered Bill Gates? And if you didn't see that video, it's available on the website. When Bill Gates just had this Netflix documentary, and he literally had this massive algorithm that was tracking in real time every single keyword, every single word or hashtag that not only involved him, but involved the technology and the companies that he was working with. They do this not because they care if somebody's doing a Bill Gates exposed video. They do this to gauge the public, to see what they're suspicious of and what they're not. So CRISPR, again, was leading the way as being the one who was going to likely produce this bird flu vax. And in fact, we even just recently heard how RFK Jr., who is now the health czar in America, was an investor in CRISPR leading up to being selected by Donald Trump, because they announced this to everybody conveniently, the stocks they're invested in, and they supposedly were told that they have to sell all their stocks away, which we know they never actually do. That's how these people on a $100,000 salary have about 10 different homes like Nancy Pelosi and the rest of them. So Zoetis is not directly like CRISPR. Let me give you what the Google search will tell you, right? They'll say, no, it's not the same thing. They do both involve genetic manipulation. But Zoetis is a large animal health company focused on developing drugs and vaccines for animals, while CRISPR is gene editing. Specifically, the technology could be used in various fields, including animal health, but it's not a company itself. However, Zoetis does actively research and utilize CRISPR technologies. In fact, Zoetis employees have been trained and provided expertise on CRISPR technology, cell culture, and flow cytometry, okay? They just had a class, a microbiology cure class, where they partnered together, CRISPR with Zoetis, for animal health. And why is this important? For anybody out there, it's like, I don't get it. If the bird's gonna get the shot, what do I actually care? Because, and I'll show you a clip so you can get it in more detail later in the video, CRISPR gene editing will be passed from can be passed from a parent to a child. So in other words, if an adult received this, which we just heard about during the outbreak, and then that adult breastfed the child, guess what? it's going into the child, and they don't have a clue, and they don't even realize what gene editing is. So in this case, this is how they say, hey, none of these people, we're not getting enough people running to their pharmacy to get this in their body. Now more and more people are skeptical, as we see, of actually getting one. In fact, even the MAGA supporters, as much as they'll give Trump a pass with everything he does, they're not going to run and go get one just because Donald Trump says to go get one, because he's the one who created Operation Warp Speed. So most of these people don't realize that by getting into the food supply chain, by directly starting with chickens, and yes, I understand that they already do experiments like this, but this is a way that they can start by saying, look, we're going to go to all the Purdue chicken farms, we're going to go to all the big national farms, we're going to make sure they all have it. So when you eat the food, you don't have to worry about getting the bird flu, because we've convinced you over the last couple of months/years that humans are getting the bird flu from being interacting with chickens, let alone eating some of these chickens, right? So we need to get these chickens to get this potion inside of them. And everyone will go, okay, I guess that's not a big deal, right? Don't they they do this to cows and chickens, right? Right, but what they don't tell you is that it's transmissible. So once they get it in the chickens at all these big farms, and you go to the grocery store and you buy some eggs, it's transferable to you. And this starts with the big farms, but it ends up, what they care about more is independent farmers like us. Because again, we don't have the slightest clue what they're already putting in the food supply chain. I mean, we've seen video clips, I'm sure most of you have, I covered it over the years, where pretty much the food's magnetized, right? People are holding magnets up to their chicken, and they're seeing the black graphene goo, the ferrofluid graphene combo coming up, right? So they're already doing stuff to the food supply chain. This is about getting to the farmers. That's what it's about. It starts this way. And then they say, hey, we've cut back 70% of the cases are down. But there's still a problem. These farmers who are independent, who are selling their own eggs, who are selling their own chicken, the Amish, let's say, hypothetically, right? Because we know they'll bring them into it. They have to get it too, or we're going to shut down their operations. How many stories have we heard about the Amish over the last couple of years, where the Amish are getting picked on by Big Brother? Big Brother showing up, they're shutting down their operations because they're not following FDA or USDA protocols, or whatever they decide to, tag to it, CDC protocols, right? That's what they'll do. They'll make it so that everybody has to have it. I talked about that squirrel video, and people said, oh, you're crazy. The squirrel, the dancing squirrel from TikTok, where they came to their front door and they euthanized the squirrel. That story, in my belief, was out there for a reason, to get you prepared, to have Big Brother show up at your home if you got a chicken coop in the back. Because a lot of people have a chicken coop in the back. And you might say that it's paranoid. Oh, you're taking it too far. We know that they have to get this inside of human beings' bodies. This is the fourth industrial revolution. That's what people need to understand. This isn't just about, well, we want to kill off the population. We want to bring the number down. That's all people automatically think. The fourth industrial revolution, remember, it's you that are changing. This technology has to be inside of you. Your genes have to be edited. You are going to join the internet of bodies. So if you wouldn't willingly go and get it in you, guess what? They're going to make sure everybody has it in them. And even if they're already putting it in the mass supply of chicken and the mass supply of cattle, they're going to make sure that if you're a farmer and you got chickens, they're coming for them. If you're a farmer and you have cows, guess what? Your cows can now get the bird flu too. They're coming for them, right? So this is passed on. That's what CRISPR enables. It's a tool, that when they go in and they edit the genes of an embryo, it can be passed on to future generations. So if you remember, I don't know, how many people are still here, but I know there's a good amount of you, obviously. I talked about this at least 2 years ago. Okay, they were talking about proof of concept that CRISPR was going to be the one that came out with this gene editing technology. And clearly they saw and see how many people are aware of what CRISPR is, aware that it could be passed on, right? So all these stories were out there about scientists harnessing CRISPR. So all they did is just pivot over to Zoetis here. Zoetis, which is working with CRISPR anyway. This is what they do. People go, oh, I don't know about Zoetis, right? Oh, and Zoetis has a connection to Pfizer, right? Don't worry about that either, right? They don't want you to think that, they don't want you to hear any of these scary words that might get you worried, like Pfizer or Moderna or CRISPR. So you also might remember during the outbreak, they were talking about University of California, grow and eat your own vaccines, right? Because they were attempting then to get it in the food supply chain. And again, I mentioned earlier, we had Zuckerberg and Gates. They put so much money into quote unquote funding a study in which 100 white-tailed deer received the Pfizer PCR test and mRNA, right? This was during the outbreak. Zuckerberg and Gates, your meat and vegetables and pets were being injected with it, right? Plenty of articles out there. They weren't even hiding it. Hunters were the first people to discover that a lot of these animals were injected based on what they were seeing with the animals, the animal behavior. Don't forget the zombie deer thing that was going on I talked about. All of a sudden, these deer were showing up, standing there like zombies, frozen in the middle of the road. Cars are coming down the road, and the zombies are standing there, not moving. I wonder what that was from, right? A fart in the wind, and all of a sudden the deer were paralyzed in the streets, because this is what they've been doing and continue to do. So the company has received conditional approval, okay? And one of the things that people out there need to remember is stuff like this. In the UK where they do this, they go, oh, no, we're not going to make it mandatory. We're not going to make it mandatory, okay? The farmer can decide what to do, because this is how they just twist things. But it says here, to prevent further spread, the Environment Department has imposed mandatory culls with birds within a 3-kilometer radius of a confirmed case, right? So you have your social distancing with the pets here, with the chickens, right? Oh, your chicken, while you might, have your own farm and you're independent. Well, you know what? One of the chickens you brought in to your backyard here, well, one of them got in contact with another one, and now your whole flock is contaminated. So we're going to have to come in and we're going to have to provide it. Don't worry, we'll do it free of charge to help you out, And again, that's another way they can trick some of these people who are not aware of what any of this stuff is with gene editing. And they'll go, well, all right, I guess, what's the big deal, right? Right, and then it just continues to spread in the food supply chain. And don't forget, too, recently, and again, this video scrubbed, because I believe it was on one of the ones that was terminated, they talked about in the backyard. Remember that predictive programming? They literally aired like 40 stories with their Sinclair Broadcasting Group where they were saying, quote, backyard flock. They kept saying it, backyard flock, because they were getting people conditioned to realize, hey, backyard flock, it sounds a lot different than, hey, there's a massive poultry farm for Purdue that has 1 million chickens on it. No, backyard flock, because that's really what they actually care about. And I'm just going to play for you this clip for anybody out there that doesn't understand this technology. And I don't expect people to understand. If this stuff wasn't happening in the world, I couldn't care less or wouldn't care less about CRISPR, because I would never, ever, ever allow this technology inside of my body. But now that we know what they're doing, it's important to become aware of what the enemy is trying to do. And people just don't seem to grasp what this gene editing is. And I'll play for you now them talking about, of course, a TED Talk, how neat it is, and specifically talking about, you want to have a baby that's 6 feet tall. Well, we'll go in and edit the embryo of the mom, right? And when the mom gives birth to the baby can be 6 feet tall. You want your baby to be born with the beard? You want the bearded woman to come out of your mother's, is that what you want to come out of your womb? You want some circus freak to come out? No problem. With CRISPR, we can go in and do that. And then people don't realize, well, that means that whatever they're doing to the genes of the mother is being passed on to the child, right? So they're already editing the genes of the child. That's what they'll do with the chickens, right? The eggs will be transmissible. That's the point of all of it. So here they are talking about it. And remember what Claus said, right? It's you who are changing. That's what the fourth industrial revolution is.
CRISPR is amazing because it allows us to precisely edit the DNA in living organisms, including in people and plants. With CRISPR, we can change, remove, or replace the genes that govern the function of cells. This means that we now have the ability to use CRISPR like a word processor to find, cut, and paste text.
In 2011, scientists created glow-in-the-dark cats. The researchers took a gene from glowing jellyfish and inserted it into the unfertilized eggs of house cats. It was a neat trick, but they had a bigger goal in mind. They also made the cats more likely to be resistant to a feline form of AIDS by, again, manipulating their DNA. And cats aren't that different than humans. In fact, we share around 90% of our DNA with them. So why can't we engineer humans in the same way? Well, we can. Engineer ourselves to be resistant to life-threatening illnesses, that is. In fact, one scientist claims that he's genetically engineered 2 babies using a revolutionary tool called CRISPR. But what exactly is a CRISPR baby anyway? Would you like to be 6 feet tall or never bald? The secret to traits like these lies in the 6 billion letters of your genetic code. But there can be something else in there as well. Mutations. Genetic mutations are linked to at least 6,000 medical conditions, from sickle cell anemia to Huntington's disease. But what if you could make those mutations simply disappear? That's where the gene editing tool CRISPR comes in. CRISPR is made from specialized proteins and other compounds found in certain bacteria. Normally, these proteins protect the bacteria by destroying enemy invaders like viruses. But the inventors of CRISPR figured out how to turn those proteins against genetic mutations and other genes linked to disease. First, they give the proteins coordinates of the wanted gene. Then, CRISPR runs a seek and destroy function. After that, other molecules are dispatched to repair the gene with new, healthy DNA. And just like that, you can edit the human genome. But while the edits may be quick, their changes can last for centuries. Especially if you're editing the DNA in an embryo. Embryos start out with a single cell that eventually replicates into millions and then trillions more. So if you alter that initial cell first, you're manipulating the ingredients for every cell that follows later in life. And those same altered cells can be passed on from generation to generation. That's one reason why most experiments on human embryos haven't left the lab. That is, except for the work of Dr. He Jiankui. He claims to have used CRISPR to target and knock out the CCR5 gene in human embryos, which is linked to HIV infection. And then he did something that shocked the scientific community. He implanted the embryos into several women, one of whom gave birth to genetically modified twins. Resistance to HIV aside, most scientists say the procedure was too risky. At least 2 studies suggest that edited cells might actually trigger cancer. And another found that CRISPR can accidentally take aim at healthy DNA. So while CRISPR could make us immune to disease, who knows what else we might get on the side. He implanted the embryos into several women, one of whom gave birth to genetically modified twins.
The features of this fourth industrial revolution is that it doesn't change what we are doing, but it changes us.
The difference of this fourth industrial revolution is it doesn't change what you are doing. It changes you. If you take genetic editing, right. Just as an example, it's you who are changed. Yeah, and of course this has a big impact on your identity.
Yeah. And offers certain kinds of possibilities that have to be careful about. You know, when you began to do that kind of gene editing, some people worry that you are changing what it means to be human.
That's the problem. And of course, the new industrial revolution offers us many opportunities, but it raises manifold questions on the ethical, but even legal implications. And we have to be prepared for it, and that's what we want to do in Davos next year. So this fourth industrial revolution is, it doesn't change what you are doing. It changes you. If you take genetic editing, right. Just as an example, it's you who are changed.
So that's the big plan. That's what they're doing now. It's going to be quiet in the background because as long as people don't feel bothered like they were a few years ago, which I mean, you know, the government overreach was insane. People getting arrested based on going out after dark because we were given curfews like children, forced to lose our job. Nobody cared if people were able to pay for groceries anymore to feed their family. They were more concerned about the common cough. It's unbelievable what we allowed them to get away with. But I said it then and I'll say it again. It's all about getting this specific tech inside of the body. And if they know, and they're literally watching and listening to everything everyone says. And people think that that means, oh, they're watching and listening. Like they're going to show up at my front door and arrest me. Well, I haven't committed a crime. I mean, they could show up and whack me, sure. But they're listening. They're listening to see how they can manipulate, how they can maneuver. Because there's more ways than just getting it directly into you by getting you to volunteer and go get it. That was phase one. And they saw, you know, we don't even know what the real data is, right? They were telling us like 70% of the population had it, 80%. Nobody was buying any of that. I mean, we all know somebody that fell for it. And I'm sure just like some of you, I know people that didn't last over a year once they got it. Perfectly healthy people. I know multiple ones who were in their 60s. Bye-bye. Went quick. Didn't take my advice, which again, you know, I tell people out there all the time, like, I'm trying to wake people up. Look, people closest to you are the hardest ones to wake up. I know that from experience as well. So they know that the data did not support the evidence that they were trying to give their make-believe science and their make-believe statistics. But if they have to get it in you and they have to do all these other things to do so, to manipulate people into thinking, oh, it's just for the chickens, it's not a big deal, because it's too many steps for them. Right? Oh, it could go from there to there. Then they go, I don't know, you know, I'll take my chances then. As long as they're not doing it to me, as long as they're not telling me I got to show up here and do this and I got to go twice, I got to go get my second shot, right? Go get my boot. No, right? They are coming for the food supply chain in every way possible. And again, we know that they manipulate, you know, Purdue, and, you know, I don't think anybody out there listening to my channel is eating Purdue meat. But this is about being able to require farmers, anybody out there who even just has chickens in their yard, to comply. Because you don't think that they are aware? I mean, somebody would message me a couple of weeks ago, you know, and they bought a bunch of chickens, and they were like, they wanted my ID and they wanted my birth certificate, right? Well, what do you think that is? Because they want to, you know, make sure that you're petting your chickens every day. They want to come over and say, oh, are you giving your chickens a bath? We want to make sure your chickens are having a wonderful life. I mean, maybe some of these people probably are thinking that with the way the world has gone. Oh, I'm going to come over. I'm going to visit the chickens. We're going to miss the chickens here from Tractor Supply. No, it's so that they know who has chickens, where the chickens are, and all they have to do is say, hey, you got yours at Tractor Supply? Guess what? Your chickens came in contact months prior with chickens that were infected. And then you'll be panicking because you'll be like, oh my gosh, am I going to get the bird flu? My chicken's going to die. And they'll be like, don't worry about it. We got the solution right here. Let us in your backyard. And bada bing, bada boom. That's how it works. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.